What's up, everybody? Happy Sunday. The finale for the Denver Broncos. The regular season is over. And essentially, this game means literally absolutely nothing today because the Chargers most likely lock in the 5 seed with the Ravens currently losing. So we've got Cecil Emery, Andrew Mason, Rachel Veal for the next 15 minutes. While a lot of these games are in halftime, so we're going to get into some of the Broncos coaching stuff. But first of all, how are both of you? Mace, how are you this morning?
Doing very well. It's actually a pretty nice day for football out here. So the sun is shining. The field, that $400,000 field for one game that Greg Penner ponied up for in the last couple of weeks, it looks great. So, hey, I mean, bring it on. They're going to play football. But that being said, when I was driving over here and I was walking through the parking lot, pretty sparse, even for 2.5, 3 hours before kickoff. There are going to be a lot of empty seats at this one.
Okay. Well, Cecil, I'm glad you're back with us. Wi-Fi working all right?
No, I just need to know how to use the internet. So
It happens. How are you today, though? Happy Sunday.
I'm tuned out. I just want to get to the off season. Like I'm starting my draft reports tomorrow at denversports.com. Like you will not want to miss this. No one will cover the draft better than me and Mace. So my daily reports will start tomorrow and it's going to be awesome. And that's all I really care about right now is the draft. Like just get this thing done with. Everybody stay healthy, whatever, win. I really don't care, honestly.
Okay. I like it. Well, I want to ask, Mace just mentioned, obviously, the $400,000 new field for one game. Is that a waste of money, or is it showing the standard that the Broncos and this new ownership group want to live up to, Mace?
It's the standard. I think it's one of those things where I think partially it's to send a message to the public, even to coaching candidates that you're about to interview, of the level of commitment around here that you're willing to spend nearly $500,000 on a field for one game just because it was not up to what they felt the standard was. And I mean, you don't have to go far around the league to see fields that are in pretty lousy shape by the end of the season. And they were willing to say, look, for this basically throwaway game, this isn't up to snuff. This is not what we want to stand for. So I think it's a multi-layered message to a lot of different targets and constituencies here, quite frankly, about what they're going to try to do going forward.
Yeah, we also have Vicky who said we should offer to host the AFC Championship since we have the fresh field. Obviously, if it comes down to having to go to a neutral site, do you think that played anything into it, Mace?
I don't think so. I think if it does come down to a neutral site, I'm not sure they're looking at places that aren't climate controlled in terms of the field. So I know Indianapolis kind of ruled itself out, but I think you're probably looking more at places like maybe Atlanta, Las Vegas, Minneapolis than Denver.
Okay, sounds good. Well, Cecil, while I know you're excited about getting towards the draft, there are some players that could potentially be, trying to get another contract signed or anything. So when I say that, who's the number one name that pops into your mind?
Give me a name. Again, I'm in draft mode. Like this game, I'm thinking about Joshua Kelly or Larry Roundtree. I'm thinking about fantasy football. I'm thinking about dynasty modes. Like, okay, Mace, give me a name and we'll talk about it. Because to me, I'm just like, everyone just gets safe through this game. It seriously is. It's that level today, for me at least. And as far as the spending the money on the field or having a neutral site AFC Championship game, like, yeah, if you had a dome, if you had a retractable roof, then that'd be part of the conversation. And someone said on Twitter, the most important thing ever, like, this is what Mr. Bolin would do, having that standard. And it felt good, while we could argue if that would be possible or whatever from the cash perspective, it's just good to have the standard back. So players playing for contracts, I want to see more Jerry Jeudy pick up his fifth-year option, all those sorts of things. It's stuff that I've written about at denversports.com in my game plan. But again, Rachel, I apologize because I'm in like next year mode already. I couldn't wait because this season has been an abomination.
Well, I mean, you talk about players that you want to see film of. I mean, you mentioned Jerry Jeudy on the fifth-year option. I want to see what Albert O does today as well. I think he's really intriguing. Got the touchdown last week, had 3 catches. They targeted him 6 times. He had 1 clean drop, another that maybe he could have had, but doesn't go into the books as a drop. But I want to see kind of what these 2 weeks of really active, engaged coaching on him can do. Because I think one thing that we may have learned about Albert O is that he is simply one of those players that needs a little more maintenance than others. There are some guys you can just say, okay, you just teach them and go and do it. Albert O, I think, is one of those guys. He needs a little bit more maintenance. He needs the arm around the shoulder. He needs that guidance to kind of keep him from losing focus, keep him from losing, from getting too caught up in his headspace in a negative way. And so if he has another good game, I think you start saying, okay, he's worth that investment for whoever the new coaching staff is. And hopefully they'll make that investment in him, because you start fast forwarding in next year, the notion of Albert O and Dulcich stretching the field and being and providing 2 tight ends with vertical threats. That's the kind of thing that can be pretty tough for an opponent to deal with.
And here's the problem with Nathaniel Hackett. 1,134 problems with Nathaniel Hackett. They might have already ruined him. I mean, because we look at the stat line, it's nice last week for Albert O. He also dropped passes, double caught his touchdown. Like, I want to see cleaner play, but if it's in his head, I agree with you, Mace. He's definitely more of a high maintenance player, which there's nothing wrong with that. Nobody get offended that I said high maintenance, but like, yeah, unless you ruined him already. And that's something that coaching staff might have done by not knowing that you needed to love him up a little bit more, have the arm around the shoulder, work towards that natural talent, and just understand Greg Dulcich isn't a great blocker. He's better than Albert O, but like still for this whole, like, he can't block, that's why he's not on the field, or he's got the same skill set. Those are all bogus excuses for a real coaching staff that has a plan for the future. And this young man, unfortunately, had to pay that price. Hopefully they didn't ruin him mentally, because that's a huge part of this game.
And Cecil, you've also said it plenty of times when it comes down to Garrett Bowles. Like, that's how you have to treat him. That's what made him so successful in the years where we saw peak Garrett Bowles as well.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Any manager of people know that people are like rubber bands. They're wound differently. Some are wound really tight and some are wound really loose. Some people you can't say anything to or you'll crush them. Some people you got to kick in the ass every day. And it doesn't matter. It's results-based business. Albert O can give you results. Just know how to work with them.
No, for sure. Okay, well, we have to get into the big talk of yesterday and today, and that is the Broncos saying that they are going to talk to Sean Payton and that the Saints want a first-round pick for the head coach. Now, is it a smart move, knowing with all the holes that this Broncos team is going to have filled by next year? Is it a smart move to know that you have to give up a first round for him, Cecil?
No. And by the way, it's more than a first round.
Yeah.
So they say first round and more. Well, and more could be another first rounder. Like, and they seem to be on the same page, at least according to the reports we're hearing, that, you know, hey, it sounds like they're open to having that dialogue and continuing that discussion, meeting the Saints' asking price, which could be quite high. But there's a lot of work to do. I'd hold on to that first round pick like Rose hanging onto the door in Titanic, right? Just hang on for life. But that's just me, Mace. I'm a draft guy, so I don't want to give up picks.
I mean, yeah, it's not just the first round pick. It's the and that kind of worries me. There was something I saw this morning about how that and could mean both your third round picks this year and then a second round pick next year. And I don't think this team can do that. I don't think this team is in a position to do that unless they want to recoup some of that by trading some of their personnel. I mean, what's the next move beyond that? You trade Pat Surtain to try to recoup a first and a second round pick, perhaps. I mean, and then you're causing more problems. And so right now, kind of looking at the cost of Sean Payton, if you can get Jim Harbaugh, I'd say it's not worth it. And I'd say even if you can't get Jim Harbaugh, because Harbaugh seems to be in the mode of trying to cultivate as many options as he can. And also the other thing is we don't know what this coaching landscape is going to look like 24 hours from now. We don't know what it's going to look like 10 days from now, because there could be some changes that happen not on what is called Black Monday, but going a week or so into it. We may not know about Sean McVay for a week, for example. So that's another thing that comes into play. So me personally, if you told me Sean Payton or Dan Quinn, Sean Payton costs you all these draft picks, Dan Quinn costs you nothing, I'd take Dan Quinn.
Cecil?
Yeah, I mean, that's to hang on to your draft picks and go get Jim Harbaugh, go get Dan Quinn. Like, there's plenty of other options. I think it's nice to be in the conversation. It's nice that they're having that. And when you have $70 billion, you're in every conversation, which is good. It's smart business. And these are smart business people that are running this team. But the smart business isn't to give up all your draft capital to get a head coach when you have other options that can be as good or better that are available to you without giving up those draft picks, because they're so far off. They need all the help they can get.
Quite literally. Sean McVay is obviously like starting to pop up. He said he's going to reevaluate during the offseason, his future plans. Where does he rank on your list of candidates that you really like, Cecil?
Oh, he'd just retire. So he'd step away and he'd retire. Like that's with Sean McVay. Now the guy, if you want to go to the Rams, I've mentioned him before. And Mace, I must mention Chatfield a lot on Orange and Blue today when we're talking about Dalton Keene, but I'll mention Zach Robinson. If you want to look at the Rams staff, you want the next Cam O'Connell, which they're not going to get. But I just like throwing out the name Zach Robinson because that's your next Mike McDaniel. That's your next young innovative. Mike McDaniel is the option if the Dolphins get rid of him. That's, in my opinion, the number one option. But again, we'll have to wait and see what these teams decide to do.
Yeah, if Sean McVay walks away, he may not be back for quite a while.
It's the Dick Vermeil thing.
That's bingo. The name I was going to say, this is Dick Vermeil, and Vermeil walked away for 14 years. The thing with McVay and Vermeil, what they have in common is they only know one way to go, and it's fifth gear all the time, and that takes a toll. Sean McVay got married last summer. His wife has said that she wants to start a family. So there are some things kind of coming into place that tell me that McVay may be moving on and maybe out of coaching for a generation or so. And could I see him coming back? Absolutely. But I don't think he is in any way an option for the Broncos. And as for Zach Robinson, Cease, I think if this team were in another place, I think you'd think about that kind of coach. But you hear the talk about building a culture and trying to get that right. And to me, that screams bringing someone in who has successfully built a culture. And that's why, for example, I think Dan Quinn may be a better candidate than a lot of Broncos fans would admit today.
Is this going to be the last game we see with an Evero Broncos defense?
No, I think he'll be back.
Yeah, and we need to see who the head coach is, but I think whoever the head coach is, you've already got that half taken care of. So there's a lot of work to do. It's gives you peace of mind that you can say, okay, Evero, run the defense, let me fix the offense, and work with Russell Wilson. And you can get good football out of Russell Wilson. So there's that.
And I think the other thing on Evero is he may get an interview other than the Broncos somewhere, but I don't know that it's necessarily his time. When you talk about a defensive coordinator making the leap in this cycle, the name you hear most often is D'Amico Ryans with the 49ers. So Evero's kind of a back burner head coaching candidate. And I think that the Broncos will probably make it clear in the interview process how, okay, the head coach, it's your staff, you put it together, but we've got somebody here in Evero and even his assistants that we feel like you can inherit them and hit the ground running with these guys. And if it's Jim Harbaugh, well, Evero's worked with Jim Harbaugh before. If it's Dan Quinn, Evero worked with Raheem Morris, who is somebody that worked very closely with Dan Quinn in Atlanta. It's not, you don't have to go 6 degrees of separation to find the connections here that I think would keep Evero around.
And if you're Evero, you don't have to bail. You don't have to jump ship, because imagine you get Jim Harbaugh, you fix Russell Wilson, which can work, and you start winning. Now, instead of like a team or two and you're kind of the underrated candidate, now you're is it Cat's Pajamas or Cat's Meow?
Cat's Meow.
Cat's
Meow, bee's knees.
Bees and bees.
All that. Yeah, bring all the biology into it. If you're Jara Evero, all of a sudden you're everybody's guy because the Broncos are winning and Russell Wilson's comeback player of the year. And oh my God, the defense is great. So just a little bit of patience on Evero's part could pay off big time for him.
I love that. All right. Well, we want to let everybody get back to the morning games. Halftime is over, so enjoy it. And we'll be back for halftime chill. Mace, Cecil, as always, a pleasure hanging out with you and talking with you. And you can catch these two, Orange and Blue, today, 3:30 daily on Monday through Friday, I guess I should say. And we'll see you guys at half. Bye, everybody.